Hey guys, it's Pastor Kerry and Happy New Year. As we're starting this new year, I wanted to just share a couple thoughts with you this morning. And I want to share a couple thoughts about God's love. In my previous ministry, I knew a guy who had schizophrenia, and he also had a very serious alcohol problem. Is that when we, early on in our relationship, is that he called me one night and he said, Pastor Kerry, come and cut down my rope. He's getting ready to hang himself in his garage. He was completely drunk and just ready to kill himself. So I drove over. I was in the midst of sharing my fourth step with my sponsor at a Celebrate Recovery meeting. And so I was right in the middle of that. And I just told him, hey, I got to go. And so I drove over to this guy's house. And sure enough, he had the rope hanging up in his garage and he was getting ready to kill himself. And so I cut it down. And after that, we just we continued to love on him and encourage him in whatever we could and way that we could, and got him into Celebrate Recovery. And he became just truly a committed Christian. He's kind of moved on out of my life now. He has relocated, and so I've lost contact with him. But he was one of these guys that, even though he had just a whole life full of heartbreak and trouble, is that he just really had a sense of joy in his life. And it was really him who taught me that God's love is bigger. In his case, God's love is bigger than his schizophrenia. And even though after becoming a Christian and getting sober and walking with the Lord, he still had his schizophrenia. It didn't just magically go away. He managed it actually a lot better, in that relationship with Christ. But nevertheless, he still struggled with his mental illness. I've often thought about his standing before God, because he did not have a fully healthy brain. I assume that, he's still kind of in that space in his life, but he did not have a fully healthy brain. And he didn't have many of the privileges that I enjoy in my life. And so, but here's what he did have. He did have a strong reliance on God, and he had a joy that went with that. And so that was an encouragement to me, because he taught me that God's love is bigger than his schizophrenia. And I need to be reminded from time to time in my own life that God's love is bigger than my neurosis. Now, some people have serious mental illnesses, and some of us have neuroses. And I have a form of obsessive compulsive disorder, an anxiety disorder that oftentimes robs me of my joy in my life and in my relationship with God. And so it was an important lesson for me to learn in my life, that God's love is bigger than my neurosis. And I would encourage you that whatever comes your way this year in 2022, it's going to take me a while to get used to saying that, but whatever comes your way in 2022 is just to make sure that you have that settled belief that God's love is bigger. God's love is bigger than his schizophrenia. God's love is bigger than your depression. God's love is bigger than your neurosis. God's love is bigger than your circumstances. And I don't always find joy in the midst of my circumstances, or I guess I don't always find happiness in the midst of my circumstances or with my neurosis, but I can find joy in knowing that God's love is bigger. There's a great passage of scripture in the book of Colossians, and you see it there on the screen. And it tells us in the book of Colossians, chapter 3, verse number 15, it says, "Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts." And I mean to tell you, that's a great passage for us to cling to throughout 2022. And I hope that you can remember that God's love is bigger throughout this entire year. No matter what comes your way, no matter what you're struggling with, no matter what circumstances you find yourself in, God's love is bigger. And so let me encourage you to keep speaking truth and keep showing grace all throughout the year. That's it for now. Hey, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.